Second Chances of the Soul by 55artix. Chapter 4. The Invasion, Part 1. As Tony and Natasha landed in front of Pegasus, a familiar flash of light appeared. The unmistakable sound of thunder that accompanied it vibrated through the secret shield base. After the light faded out, the familiar faces of Thor and Loki took its place. Tony gave Natasha a confused glance before turning to the brothers and saying, "What the hell are you two doing here?" Thor instantly put his hands up in surrender before introducing himself. "We mean no earth, no harm. I am Thor, King of Asgard and God of Thunder, and this is my brother Loki, Prince of Asgard and God of Mischief. You may recognize us, as we defeated the Frost Giants in the place called New Mexico not long ago. We are here to take the Tesseract back to Asgard. We have many more defenses there, and will be able to provide better protection. Your world is currently at risk, as many seek the power of the Tesseract. We only seek to protect the Tesseract and your people." Loki glanced at Natasha and Tony with a bewildered look on his face. He seemed equally surprised to see them there. He continued staring at them thoughtfully for a few seconds, before grabbing his brother's arm and dragging him inside the building. "Come on, brother! We don't have time for formalities. We need to get the Tesseract before it is stolen by another," Loki said frantically. The four of them barged into Pegasus' lab all at once, only to find Nick Fury waiting for them. "What's this I hear about the Tesseract?" "We only wish to prevent the Tesseract from falling into the wrong hands," Loki replied in what seemed like a poor attempt to defuse the situation. "Sounds like a threat," Fury stated, glowering at Loki menacingly. Fury crossed his arms, turning to the two brothers. "What makes you think we would willingly give you the Tesseract? Earth needs protection, and I don't see how giving away the energy source that could be utilized for said protection would benefit our people." Loki began to open his mouth to respond when suddenly a pulse of energy shook the room. "Director Fury! These readings are becoming unstable!" Erik Selvig yelled in distress. A giant blast radiated the room, and Ebony Maw appeared, scepter in hand. Tony noticed Loki lunging at his brother, but it was too late. Before Loki could stop him, Thor began charging at Maw with Mjolnir. "Thor, wait! Don't let him near you! The scepter contains the Mind Stone! Anyone he touches he can control!" Loki exclaimed. Loki's words appeared lost on Thor as he continued to head Maw's way. Maw lifted the scepter and came within an inch of landing on Thor's chest, when suddenly an arrow shot towards Maw's hand, nearly hitting him before he used magic to swipe it away. Clint then revealed himself as he landed in front of Thor, having jumped down from the bunker above. It was impossible to miss the slight surge of power and the icy blue that overtook Clint's eyes as he received the hit from the scepter meant for Thor. "Clint!" Natasha screamed. "Legolas!" "Not again! How many times do we have to mess it up already?" Unfortunately, it was too late. Chaos erupted as everyone scrambled to escape from the facility that was now due to blow. Tony quickly made his way to the cube, placing it into a case and handing the Tesseract to Fury, yelling for him to take it away. Tony could only watch out of the corner of his eye as Maw used the chaos to his advantage, gaining control over Erik Selvig as well as a few other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Just as Fury looked like he might succeed in escaping with the Tesseract, a mind-controlled Clint cornered him, thrusting Fury into the other side of the room and snatching the Tesseract from his hands. Fury groaned as he sat up and ran to the door, seeming to recognize defeat. Even with the help of Thor, Loki and Tony and Natasha, Ebony Maw still managed to make a clean getaway with Clint and Selvig. The combination of the chaos, Maw's magic, and the power of the scepter paved the way for his escape. "Guys, we need to get out of here! This place is gonna blow!" Tony yelled at the other three. "Hang on, Widow!" Tony flew over to Natasha and grabbed her before taking off. Tony noticed as Thor grabbed Loki in a similar fashion before flying away with Mjolnir. Peter made his way into the tower, squeezing past all the Stark Industries workers. Being small had its perks, as no one even noticed him sneak by. May and Ben told him that Mr. Stark wouldn't be able to work with him tonight. But Peter couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. What if Mr. Stark was sick? What if he had a dangerous mission? Peter only wanted to help him. As Peter arrived at the door of Mr. Stark's lab, he noticed it was empty. "Jarvis, where is Mr. Stark?" Peter asked. My GPS coordinates indicate that Mr. Stark has routed his suit back to the tower and should be arriving shortly with Miss Romanoff. Jarvis replied. Nat's coming? Peter asked excitedly. Peter had grown rather close to the red-haired woman, as she often hung around Mr. Stark's lab during Pete's junior internship. She could be scary at times, but she was also very kind and nurturing. Sometimes she reminded Peter of his Aunt May. Yes, it appears that Sir is currently flying with Miss Romanoff, said Jarvis. Would you like to wait in the lab? Yeah, I'll wait for him, Peter replied. So Nat and Mr. Stark are off doing something. Maybe they're on a mission. Mr. Stark said she was some kind of agent. They're probably working together. Mr. Stark would never let me help him. He's always super overprotective. He freaks out at me if I'm using his tools in the lab. But I'll show him that I can help. He just can't know that I'm here. Hey, Jarvis, could you not tell Mr. Stark that I'm here? Since you are not an intruder and have authorized access to all floors on the tower, my code does not require me to inform Mr. Stark of your presence unless he specifically asks if you are here, Jarvis responded. Just as Peter was about to thank Jarvis, he heard the signature sound of the Iron Man armor clanking against the floor of the lab. Peter quickly thrust himself underneath the table, praying that Mr. Stark hadn't heard him. Peter watched as Mr. Stark stepped out of his suit after putting Natasha down. What exactly did we change that would make a reindeer game show up with Point Break to take the Tesseract back to Asgard? Why is Loki not being mind-controlled by Thanos at this point? As far as I know, we didn't change anything relating to the events in space. Unless... You said Loki was in the Soul World, right? Maybe he came back in time as well. That might explain why a bunch of blue ice monsters showed up in New Mexico when Thor was banished to. I had a feeling that the whole snafu there had gone down differently last time. Loki must have changed something. Damn, I should have made more attention to that, Mr. Stark muttered, seemingly lost in thought. Fully intrigued, Peter listened as carefully as Mr. Stark muttered something about kicking himself for not noticing the differences, and how the events in New Mexico went down this time around. Peter wasn't sure if he had heard right, but he could have sworn he heard Natasha say something along the lines of how neither of them had been present when Thor had fought the Destroyer the previous time. If Peter didn't know any better, he would have thought the two were from the future. Of course, that couldn't be possible, but still, if the imaginary scenario he conjured up in his head was somehow true, that meant that even if Mr. Stark and Natasha were from the future, they still had gaps in their foresight, which had caused an oversight. Peter shook his head at himself. Sometimes he really needed to let his imagination get the best of him. Mr. Stark and Natasha were probably talking about some adult stuff that he couldn't understand. He leaned as far out as he could under the table, while still being hidden. He could get a better view of what was going on. Natasha stared up at Tony thoughtfully. Jarvis, put up that shield file on the events in New Mexico involving Thor, Natasha instructed. As you wish, Miss Romanoff. Jarvis obliged. From what Peter understood, based on the file that Jarvis pulled up, a species called the Frost Giants had attacked New Mexico, presumably targeting Thor. According to Thor's statement, Thor had sacrificed himself while in mortal form, once again becoming worthy of Mjolnir. Loki had then arrived and helped his brother slay the creatures. Okay, that definitely didn't happen last time, Natasha muttered. We need to talk to Loki and see what he has changed. Thanos must have sent someone else to invade Earth if he never encountered Loki. We need to figure out what he knows, and if he knows who this new alien is. Said Natasha. Oh, you mean Squidward? He's Thanos' quote-unquote son. I ended up fighting him and blasting him off into space the last time. Gotta say, I am not a huge fan of that guy. Tony replied. Well, we need to speak to Loki as soon as possible and see what his plan is. But first off, Coulson's tasked me with bringing in Banner. By the way, what are we even doing back here? Natasha asked Tony. Tony walked back over to the back of the lab and pressed a remote control button. On the back wall, opened up to reveal an updated version of the Quinjet. I've got a fully equipped Iron Legion stored in this bad boy. Well, I thought it might come in handy. I also thought we'd fly this thing down to greet our good old jolly green friend together. You're not the only one who missed Brucey Bear. As Peter listened to Natasha and Tony cooperate a plan, he realised that there was indeed a mission, and a dangerous one at that. He didn't quite understand everything they were talking about, but from what he put together, there were aliens attacking Earth. Peter swiftly sprinted from under the table to the door of the Quinjet, sneaking himself in while Natasha and Tony were distracted by the hologram. He must not have been quiet enough, though, because Natasha turned towards the Quinjet with a suspicious look on his face. "Tony, did you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" Tony questioned her back. "Jarvis, there isn't an intruder in here, right?" "No, sir. There is no one in the lab without authorized access," Jarvis confirmed. Even with Jarvis's confirmation that there were no intruders, Natasha still seemed curious, but let it go. Probably because the two heroes had to focus on their main objective. Moore is probably going to show up in Germany, because he needs the iridium as a stabilizing agent, Natasha deduced. "We need to get there as soon as we pick up Bruce." After agreeing to the plan, Natasha and Tony headed into the Quinjet, not appearing to notice that Peter had hidden himself in the back corner. As Bruce Banner followed a young girl to the edge of town, a feeling of dread began to settle in his stomach. This was a setup. His suspicions were confirmed when none other than Tony Stark sat waiting for him inside the hut, along with an attractive red-haired woman. "Should have paid up front, Banner," Bruce muttered to himself. "Dr. Banner!" Tony exclaimed. "How are you and your green friend doing these days?" "So you two brought me out to the edge of the city. That's smart," Bruce replied tersely, not answering the question. "I assume the whole place is surrounded?" "No, Bruce. It's just us and you," Natasha replied carefully. "Yeah, I don't really play well with others, at least according to her," Tony stated while gesturing to Natasha. "So I typically avoid working with people that aren't necessary to the cause. Since we don't consider you a threat to us, there's no reason for us to surround the place. Contrary to what you think, you're not a monster. I read the reports, you know. That amount of gamma radiation should have killed you." "So, what's your point? Are you saying that the Hulk saved me?" Bruce said skeptically. "I'm saying that you're here for a reason. And you're resilient," Tony replied sincerely. Damn, if I wish Bruce could see what he becomes in the future, he'd be way too hard on himself. Bruce heard Tony whisper to Natasha. "What do you mean by what I become in the future?" Bruce inquired dubiously. Tony looked surprised for a moment before a look of realization dawned on his face. "Right, your green friend inside you provides you with slightly heightened senses, even when you're in Banner form," Tony said sheepishly. "I mean that as a futurist I can predict the future, and I know that you and Jolly Green will be great." Bruce responded with a doubtful look, then shook his head, decided to change the topic. "I'm sorry. I know who you are, because how could I not? But who are you?" Bruce questioned, facing Natasha. "Natasha Romanoff. We're officially here on behalf of S.H.I.E.L.D., but we'd also like to recruit you for the Avengers Initiative." "So you two aren't here to kill me? Because I'm warning you right now, that won't work out well for either of us," Bruce replied suspiciously. "Like we already said, we're not afraid of you, Bruce. The fate of the world is at stake, and we think that you can help us," Natasha said. "This is the Tesseract," Natasha continued, pulling out her phone to show Bruce. "It has the potential energy to wipe out the planet." "So what do you want me to do? Swallow it?" Bruce asked sarcastically. "We need your help to find it. It has been taken by Ebony Moore. He's from another planet," Natasha replied. "So you aren't after the monster?" Bruce asked as he took off his glasses to look Natasha in the eye. "Not unless it comes to that. We want your help locating the cube before any fights break out," Natasha replied honestly. "How do I know you aren't just going to throw me into a cage?" Bruce questioned. "Yeah, I've been held in captivity before. Not really a fan of it, so it would be pretty hypocritical for me to throw an innocent man in a cage," Tony replied. "Stop lying to me!" Bruce screamed, testing them. To his surprise, neither Natasha nor Tony even flinched. Tony just chuckled as he slapped Bruce's shoulder. "Brucey bear, you need to work on being more intimidating. I'm pretty sure my 10-year-old kid is more threatening than you." Natasha and Tony eventually managed to sway Bruce into coming with them. By the end of the ordeal, Bruce began to trust them, albeit slightly. After Mr. Stark and Natasha had left the Quinjet, Peter stayed behind, unsure of what to do. Maybe this was a bad idea. I don't even know where we are. Peter got up off the spot off the floor where he had been hiding and wandered around the Quinjet, geeking out over all the technology, now that he could get a good look around. Whoa! Peter exclaimed in awe as he looked at one of the Iron Man suits. Jarvis! How many of these does Mr. Stark have? Mr. Stark currently has 50 equipped Iron Man suits on the vehicle. A majority of them are condensed into a case. I am afraid that the location we are in has been identified as high risk by Mr. Stark. According to the baby protection protocol created by Mr. Stark, I am required to provide you with a layer of protection. A layer of protection? What do you mean, Jarvis? Peter asked, engaging the baby protection protocol. One of the Iron Man suits that was not in a case enclosed itself around Peter. The suit was too large for Peter, as his feet didn't quite touch the bottom of the suit. Oh my god! This is literally the coolest thing ever! I'm basically Iron Man! Hey, Jarvis, can I fly in this thing? Can I blast something? Peter asked excitedly. I am sorry, Mr. Parker, but the training wheels protocol prohibits you from using any combat functions in the suit unless the situation is considered dire. Peter sighed in disappointment. First the baby protection protocol, and now the training wheels protocol? I am not a baby! Tony sat in the Quinjet while the rest of the group felt a sense of trepidation. They'd be in Sagat soon, and Tony wasn't really sure what to expect. To his surprise, when they arrived in the scene in Surrogate, he found that Thor and Loki had already arrived in the scene. More had already surrendered, and the scepter had been secured. The events leading up to the attack had been slightly different, but also eerily similar to the first time around. The unknown variables, such as the new roles that Ebony Maw and Loki were playing, caused Tony to have a feeling of unease. He looked at Natasha and needed to speak with Loki as soon as possible. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that, because that's a good chapter. Peter being an adorable little sneak without actually trying to do anything wrong, and getting a layer of protection from Jarvis. And can I just say, Jarvis has Peter's back in this. It's great. And also, this is slightly Natasha and Bruce, which I actually find quite sweet. Because one thing I will say about Natasha and Bruce, Natasha shouldn't have thought she was a monster because she couldn't have kids. I don't like that idea. That a woman is a lesser woman because she can't have children. Don't like that. If she thought she was a monster because she still hasn't thought she's atoned for all the lives she took when she was an assassin, and then used that as her feeling of monstrosity so that she can relate to Bruce, well, I just think that would have worked a little bit better. They should have worked a bit more chemistry, but I honestly think it could have been really cute, personally. Then again, as you guys probably know by this point, I'm a sucker for cute couples. And also the whole she's a redhead and he turns green, the whole green and red opposites attract thing. I like that idea. Anyway, remember to like, comment and subscribe. Hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload. Blah, blah, blah. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!